Good evening and welcome to the Canadian Football Fanatics Weekly Show. We hope everyone is having a fantastic week and is excited to talk some Canadian football with Blake and I here on the show tonight. But before we do, let's introduce my co-host as always, Blake. Blake, thanks for joining us, buddy. How you doing? Blake might be
Talk to
muted.
you. Am I muted?
Blake, yeah, there you go. Now I can hear you.
Oh, weird. Yeah, no, I was doing better a couple hours ago, and fortunately, some family stuff happened and kind of put a damper on the day. But life goes on, as you of all people would know pretty well with some stuff that's happened in your family recently. So I'm definitely excited to try and talk some football here.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. And that's what I think, we try to bring on a weekly basis as well, folks. Everybody has their problems, everybody goes through ups and downs, right? But I think Blake and I try to bring, 60 to 90 minutes, every Wednesday night where people can, be a distraction, if that's maybe what you want to call it, where you can kind of forget about, if you want to call it, real world problems, that kind of thing, and kind of forget about it for a little while and talk some Canadian football. And that is exactly what we are going to do here tonight. So, as always, you can expect the 2 minute drill, BC Lions preview, and a quick little CFL quick picks with Shane Ryan, who will join us later in the show. But before we get into the football talk here tonight on the show, as always, we like to open and remind everybody to please subscribe to the YouTube channel if they're tuning in here on the show tonight. If you're over on Twitter, please head over to YouTube at some point throughout the show. You can take in the rest of the show over on YouTube, and please head over there and subscribe. Blake, I don't know if you officially checked before we went live here. I believe yesterday or actually Monday was, our goal date of having 200 subscribers on the channel. We came up three short, and then I believe we actually lost a subscriber. So we came up four short. Last time I checked, we had 196 subscribers. So if you guys can, please head over there and get us to 200 mark. That would be greatly appreciated. And if not, follow us on all the other platforms as well. Twitter, that's at underscore CF Fanatics, and on Instagram as well at Canadian Football Fanatics. Blake and I both appreciate the support so much. So without further ado, let's get into it, Blake. Let's bring up the 2 minute clock here. And Blake, I actually realized that I did make a mistake, kind of dubbing this the 2 minute drill, and maybe we might have to change things up. We are talking CFL football. It should be the 3 minute drill, if I'm not mistaken. 2 minute drill is obviously an American thing. So I don't know, Blake. Should we change it to the 3 minute drill? Try to, maybe take it a little bit longer here.
Yeah, I think the 3 minute drill is more appropriate if we're going to be talking about Canadian football here.
I agree, Blake. So let's fix this banner before we bring it up here, and let's. The 3 minute drill, folks. 3 minutes a week where Blake and I recap last week's action in the CFL quickly. So let's begin. 3 minutes is now on the clock. So starting last week, last Thursday night, the BC Lions hosted the winless Edmonton Elks, and they held off the winless Edmonton Elks with a last-second field goal, which was one of three walk-off field goals, if I'm not mistaken, on the week in the CFL. Was a overall pretty slow game, but was a classic CFL game that in that final 3 minutes, a few scores traded back and forth, and ultimately BC comes out with the win, moving to 3-1 on the season. Going to Friday, Montreal flexed their muscles versus the Toronto Argonauts and beat them 30-20. Cody Fajardo and Tyson Philpott, the rest of the gang there in the receiving core of that offense, continue to just have their way in the CFL and continue to be a dominant force offensively. We also seen the return of the dribble kick. Shout out to Jeshurun Antwi, alumni of the University of Calgary. Going to Saturday, we saw the Stamps win in overtime thanks to Rene Paredes' field goal and keep the Bombers 0-3, I believe,
0-4.
winless on the season. 0-4, excuse me, still winless on the
Get it
season.
right,
Like,
Cole.
yeah, that extra win or loss is actually important when talking about things here in down the stretch. So, Is it time, folks? I know people have been quick to bury them with sand. I think it might be time to get the shovels and start throwing the dirt on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I don't know if they can get out of this one. You know, a lot of talk about the 2011 BC Lions. Um, I just think that's such a one-off and such an outlier that I don't know if even the great Winnipeg Blue Bombers can do this. Even with Zach Laros, I know left the game. Uh, didn't practice from when I believe he was at practice, but didn't suit up. So his status is kind of unknown. Already without a lot of superstars on that team. So I think it's time to start getting the shovels out, folks, and burying the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for this season. And lastly, in the CFL this week on Sunday, the Red Blacks had the third walk-off field goal to win it against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I must say, folks, Hamilton continues to play well throughout the season and come out short when it comes to getting wins in the win column. Sort of similar to Edmonton, but got to tip my cap to Hamilton. Bullied by Mitchell, especially. I've been critical of him over the last few years, and I think he's been playing some good football as well as Hamilton. They come up just short, losing 24-22 to the Ottawa Redblacks, who are now 2-1, tied with the Toronto Argonauts in the Eastern Division. So that, folks, is the 3-minute drill, and we basically nailed 3 minutes on the clock there, Blake. So I like it. We're going to fix it from now on. No more 2-minute drill. We have the 3-minute drill being born because we are in the Great White North and we talk some Canadian football. So, Blake, that is all from the 3-minute drill. Is there anything that sticks out to you in terms of the matchups from last week outside of our BC Lions versus Edmonton Elks?
Yeah, the only thing that really sticks out heavily to me, Cole, is we kind of predicted this would be the case at the beginning of the season. And then when the season started, you kind of thought, oh, maybe Toronto can survive without Chad Kelly. Yeah, no, that definitely was not the case. That score, quite honestly, flattered the Toronto Argonauts. They scored a late touchdown with, I believe, a 2-point convert to make it a 10-point game. The Alouettes are in a class of their own in the Eastern Division for sure. And quite frankly, even with our BC Lions, as much as I loved them, with that defense, there still is a little bit of question marks. I think they're in a class of their own in the entire CFL right now.
I agree. And, I think glad you kind of touched on Toronto. I like what Toronto is doing. I don't think they're quite as elite as they have been in the past few years. It seems like they've kind of put somewhat of a leash on Cameron Dukes. Cameron Dukes has, I think, impressed considering his lack of starting experience, being new to the CFL, all that sort of stuff. But I believe he's last in the CFL in attempts by quite a few margins. By that is by the starting CFL quarterbacks. Obviously, there's a few guys that have had a few attempts here and there, but from the starting guys, I believe he's last by quite a while. He has taken care of the football, which is good. I think this kind of brings up the point, though, that how much of a system is Toronto, and that's not a bad thing. I think when people try to bring up the word system, that can get a bad rap with that. But Toronto has a great, like I've kind of mentioned a lot, Blake. Right? They have great offensive and defensive line. Right? They're built in the trenches, and I think doing so kind of takes care of your quarterback very well, and you're able to run the football offensively. You're able to get to the other team's quarterback, not allow them to one kind of drop back, pass the ball. If you're able to get a lead, you're able to kind of front run a little bit. I don't even want to say front run a little bit, but you're able to play to your strengths even more, right? Because your pass rushers in Toronto are able to kind of pin their ears back. You know that the other team has to catch up. And then you look at their cast of receivers. It's nothing special, especially you lose Curly Gittens in the offseason. But I think it's 4 or 5 guys that are really solid number 2s and number 3s. No, flat out number 1 receiver. It's a lot of 2s and 3s, but I think those 2s and 3s do their job very well and very reliably in that offense. So my question more so, I guess, to you, Blake, is do you think, and I think probably I know your answer, but I'm curious if pinball and kind of Toronto's brass is kind of watching some of these games with this in mind. But do you think it's worth the headache of bringing back a Chad Kelly when he's ready to, maybe he does have a little bit better standard. Obviously, Chad Kelly, the MOP last year, and kind of, uh, you know, has took the CFL by storm in some ways, right? An exciting player when he was backing up McLeod Bethel Thompson, comes in for them, helps them win a Grey Cup, takes over, wins an MOP. Do you think it's worth the headache to bring back Chad Kelly when it comes to Week 9? Obviously, they've already paid him a bunch of money, so this is kind of it's a very tough question. But what do you think about the possibilities and the quarterback controversy in Toronto?
Yeah, especially after last week, I just don't think that the Toronto Argonauts really have a choice, to be completely frank with you, Cole. They saw what Cameron Dukes did against an upper echelon team. And you and I like to joke all the time about how the CFL writers are not, or CFL people in general, are not giving the BC Lions enough respect for being an upper echelon team. But the fact of the matter is that the BC Lions defense is not upper echelon enough for them to win a Grey Cup, at least not in my opinion just yet. So I think Cameron Dukes, those first two games, he did enough for the Argonauts to win. And to be completely frank, again, I believe they were also lucky to win in week number 1 against the Lions. But I think against a Montreal Alouettes, I think another really good test is going to be this weekend, tomorrow, in fact, against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I think against teams like that, I mean, I even saw a couple of Argonauts fans saying that, you know what, like Cameron Dukes is great for now, but when he comes against those upper echelon teams, you need your starting quarterback. And Cameron Dukes just isn't that right now. He is not a good enough starter in the CFL, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I like your take, Blake, and I like that you defended it. I slightly disagree, but like I always say, I enjoy that we can have different opinions as well and debate about. And I think it's good for the show that we don't always agree, right? I think if we always agree, it'd be kind of boring. Um, you know, Definitely struggled against Montreal last week. Didn't look good, like you mentioned, adding eight late points. So it kind of looked more so like a 30-10 type game, more so than the 30-20. Um, I definitely agree with you that I don't think BC's defense is good enough right now to win a Grey Cup. That being said, I think BC rightfully is the second best team. No, I definitely agree with you. I think a good amount of luck went into Toronto's win versus BC in Week 1. Um, that that is kind of, you have to chalk it up to kind of sometimes the luckiest teams could just win, right? Not always the best teams, especially when I know it's different, Blake, because it's a one-time thing. We're not going to see these guys again, but like maybe you lose an early season game against a Toronto team, but you beat them later in the if you're able to get the opportunity, right? But I think I've kind of liked what I've seen from Cameron Duke so far, and I think maybe it's because of just the bad taste I have in my mouth for Chad Kelly right now. Um, I think there's kind of, in my opinion, there needs to be kind of the questions I think need to start to be had in that front office. But I think it just kind of starts at questions need to be asked more so than demanded. If kind of you understand what I'm saying, Blake, where demanded is he's playing so overwhelmingly good that you kind of have to demand him those questions be asked. I think questions being asked is kind of curiosity. Is this guy, can he do enough, right? I think we've seen, like I mentioned about the system, McLeod Wetzel Thompson kind of, leads them to a Grey Cup. Chad Kelly comes in, obviously, like I mentioned, won an MOP. You can't take that away from him, but I feel like a lot of that you have to chalk up to the system that is Toronto and the obviously the offensive coordinator, head coach, um, weapons around them and stuff like that. But enough about Toronto, Blake, and I think it's a good chatting point, and definitely something I have my eyes on, especially tomorrow. Like you mentioned about again against Saskatchewan, I think that's a huge test for somebody that's a young starter in the CFL to go into Saskatchewan, a hostile environment. Their team obviously on a high right now, but without Trevor Harris, I think that's a super winnable game. And curious to see how things play out tomorrow night. I think I'm very excited to come home tomorrow to watch that. So Blake, let's get into, I guess, a little bit of kind of talking about last week's BC Lions game. Obviously, both you and I were able to be there. What were your thoughts on the Lions pulling out the victory off Sean White's walk-off game winner?
Yeah, it was definitely an odd game. You know, I saw some friends of mine, they're Rough Riders fans, and you know the power rankings came out again. Even some Argonauts fans were a little bit surprised that the Toronto Argonauts were still ahead of the BC Lions in the power rankings. But if you think about it a little bit more, I actually don't think it's that surprising. As that friend of mine said, the Lions have played down to their opponents early in this season, and I don't think that's wrong to say, to be completely honest. I mean, they of course lost to the Argonauts. They didn't look super great against the Calgary Stampeders, even though they got a win. They didn't look super great against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, even though they again got a win. And again, this past Thursday, they didn't look super great. And if it wasn't for Sean White and a bit of luck, to be completely frank, they probably would have lost that game as well. So the BC Lions are probably a 2-2 team, maybe in a different year, maybe even a 1-3 team. But we look up, and thankfully, I should add, they are currently at 3-1.
Like I was talking about, sometimes not always the better team wins, especially early in the season. Sometimes it comes down to luck, and that oddly shaped football kind of bouncing the wrong way here and there. Things happen, especially in the CFL when things get weird. Those last 3 minutes, Blake, nobody uh, will learn harder lessons than me to how important and what can happen in the last 3 minutes of a CFL game. So um, I think it's just
I will
you
never
never.
let you live that down.
I don't think anybody should let that down. So that is okay, Blake, and you can continue to harp on me about that. So let's, Blake, kind of wrap things up. Not much to be said about the Elks Lions game. BC definitely played down. Still looking for them to play a full 60 minutes. I don't think they played full 60 minutes in their home opener. Obviously, starting out slow. Winnipeg kind of played a little bit down to Winnipeg's sloppy kind of football. Obviously, lost in week one. Last week wasn't the greatest effort, so looking for them to play a full 60 minutes this week. But before we do, Blake, let's get into a little bit of news that has happened throughout this week in BC before we talk about the
Big
Lions
news.
traveling to Hamilton. Good news. Actually, I'm going to start with bad news, Blake, before, um, you know, thinking about and sending prayers, good wishes to
Oh
BC Lions
God,
linebacker Josh Woods.
yeah,
Obviously
that's
out for the year with a Coach Campbell
torn
confirms that
ACL.
a knee procedure is going to be had. Um, I think the cool thing is he's going to be having his rehab done here in Vancouver. Going to be staying supporting the team. Being an American, he could obviously go back home, right, and not be around the team, all that sort of stuff. Lending a hand to Ben Haladic when he can. Bo Lacumbo, obviously Bo's a veteran, but having a pair of eyes on the sideline as well as a younger player like Ryder Varga, who I think is going to start to get some opportunity here because of the injury. But just um, crushing injury because Josh Woods, I think, was really starting to come into his own, and was looking forward to seeing him play an entire year as the BC Lions full-time starting linebacker. And the other bummer, Blake, I believe he signed a 2-year deal this offseason, so he'll be coming off ACL surgery and trying to get another contract, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just a bummer. You never know. A year after injury, it's. I feel like more realistic to say it's a 50-50 chance if you're able to get back to true form 1 year after. A lot of people say it's kind of the second year after. So hopefully for him, he's able to come back, be himself, be his I don't want to say maybe his elite self, but his very good self, all-star caliber type linebacker, and it's going to be no easy feat to replace him. And I think the Lions have the bodies to do it, but it won't be easy for sure. So sending our best wishes to Josh and hoping him a speedy recovery. Now let's get into some good news, Blake. We had remarkably, man, I could not believe it, Blake, when I saw Farhan's tweet this morning. Keon Hatcher and TJ Lee, full participants today, like Blake was saying, at practice. Um, what is this, Blake? when did the injury happen? October, November,
November. Oh gosh.
November, December, January,
November
February,
11th.
March, April, May, June. So like within 8 months, post torn Achilles surgery, I would say, these guys are back full practicing. Um, and Coach Campbell, on his press media availability today was pretty optimistic. He said they were, um, I forget the exact word he used. I believe it was like spry or something like that. They weren't half stepping by any means. He said they looked very good. He said if he was a betting man, that he would uh, put his money on 2 weeks from now versus Calgary, which is
Which
July
is
21st,
insane.
which is insane. Um, Also, I pray that maybe some optimism that maybe Calgary's field isn't the best field to maybe bring them back on. I know there's been quite a bit of criticism at McMahon in terms of their field, their facilities. So um, I know those guys are absolutely itching to play and dying to play. There's nobody, um, even us, Blake. I know both of us are big fans of each of them, dying for both of them to see them back in the lineup. But it's like it's week 7 by that time, boys. I honestly, Blake, honest to God, I do not need to see either of them till week 10. That's not realistic because they're professional athletes and they're competitive as heck. And that's just not going to fly, especially if they're practicing in full. Me personally, though, I just wouldn't. I don't need you to like pull a hamstring
Re-injure
because,
yourself. Yeah.
and it's not even it is the re-injury. Yes, like re-injury is definitely a thing too, but like it's always the like um compensating too, right? Like maybe
Yeah,
you're not
absolutely.
you're not like it's almost like um you're not thinking about it, but you're kind of like babying your right leg, and then you don't realize, and your hamstring pops, and then it's like you're out for another 6 games, and you're trying to battle through that, and it's that's what my fear more so than re-tearing it. Obviously, my other fear is also them kind of trying to work back into form and try to get back up to speed. That's what Coach Campbell alluded to, ramping them up for the next 2 weeks. That they got put on the 6 game. They can open their window 2 weeks earlier, so they can start practicing, and not really have any pressure for them to be put in the lineup right away. So, um, absolutely love to see them back, but let's
Yeah,
please
I was
be precautious as possible. But Blake, what are your thoughts, buddy?
yeah, no, I was just gonna say, Cole, that you've seen my seats before. I'm like first row, corner of the end zone, at BC Place, and the guy that I sit with, at the Elks game last week, TJ was of course at the game and whatever, and he said to him, he's like, TJ, how long till you're back, man? And TJ goes, 2 weeks. He's like, I'll be back in 2 weeks, I promise you, man. So that was that raised my eyebrows at that time, and then, but you're kind of like, whatever. They're professional athletes. They're just saying that, right? Like, it is what it is. They won't be back in that amount of time, and yet here we are on Wednesday, which was the Alliance first full day of practice, as they of course don't play until Sunday this week, and there they are, both practicing in full.
Yeah, man, it's crazy, especially to be practicing in full. Maybe I'd honestly expected like a limited, um, something like that, right, where they kind of ramp them back up. But obviously, they've been somewhat active on the sideline throughout practices, I would imagine. It's probably somewhat of a gym strip, in some shorts and in a t-shirt, getting their work in with the physician in the rehab training staff and stuff like that on the Lions, and they jump back into full, man, which is a great sign to see because obviously they're somewhat close to game shape. A little bit different when you get live bullets, but to jump back right into full after tearing your Achilles is just a beautiful sight to see. It's a positive sign, and I just hope that nothing. Let's knock on wood here, Blake. Nothing bad happens, and we're not going to talk about any bad things other than that. So, Blake, let's get into suppose the BC Lions traveling out east to take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats in what our good friend Jay likes to say, a cat fight in the CFL. when the Lions take on the Tiger Cats on Sunday. Once again, Blake, we have to wait all the way to the last day of the week, like week one. But
Boo.
um, what are your initial thoughts, buddy, when it comes to taking on another winless team in the Owen? Is it Owen 4 Hamilton Tiger Cats?
Yeah, first of all, the Tiger Cats are 0-4. And yeah, second of all, the Tiger Cats are a team that worries me just a little bit, as of course they have our old friend in James Butler. Bo Levi Mitchell has been playing better football this year. They have some good receivers. Tim White, of course, hasn't been his normal self this year, but you got to think he's going to break out eventually. Shamar Bridges is another guy that has broken out and become kind of target number A for Bo Levi Mitchell right now. So, and also the fact that the Lions had trouble with Hamilton last year. Hamilton, if you guys remember, came into BC Place and kind of spanked the BC Lions. And then the week after what was substantially the game for first place, the game where the Lions ended up losing home field advantage in the West Final, the Lions had to beat Hamilton in the hammer on a walk-off field goal by Sean White.
Yeah, absolutely, Blake. I agree with you. I think BC cannot take Hamilton lightly. They've been in majority of their games all season. Bo Levi Mitchell, like I mentioned, I have to eat a little bit of crow because he's uh, turned back the time a little bit this year, and looked, you know, pretty darn good so far through 4 games for Hamilton. Also, another shout out to Canadian, is it Keandre Smith,
Yep,
the former University of Guelph product. He's had himself a decent season as well for Hamilton. Like you mentioned, Tim White having some more particular drop issues, but he did, I believe, catch his first touchdown of the year last week. So, I know that would feel good. I know that start to bring some confidence. Um, and like I mentioned, Bo Levi Mitchell, that offense have already been playing somewhat good without James Butler in the lineup the past few weeks as well. Um, so Hamilton's not somebody to take lightly by any means, and BC hasn't played, like I mentioned before, a full 60 minutes so far this season, and um, maybe you squeak out another close victory and you get lucky once again, but I just think that's playing with fire, and trying to win a Grey Cup like that is not going to pan out. I think you could maybe get caught in a West Final, or maybe you just end up getting totally outclassed in a Grey Cup because all season long you've relied on squeaking it out in close games. Now, obviously, that can benefit you, right? You can win a few close games. Throughout a season, you're going to have hopefully multiple uh, double digit wins. So you cut, maybe, let's say you have 12 wins. If you can have 5 close wins, I think that provides some great learning experience and stuff like that when it comes to close games. What you can do, what you can expect, but you don't want to live like that and continue to rely on flipping the switch late and trying to turn it on in the fourth quarter to win some of these games. So definitely dangerous game, and it's the second week in a row that we're going to play a team that's winless. Or I guess it's 3 weeks. Is it 3 weeks or no?
yeah, it
Calgary had
is
a
three
win.
weeks in a row. No, no, because
Calgary,
Winnipeg, Edmonton, and now Hamilton.
yeah, correct. I was forgetting Edmonton. So, 3 weeks in a row we played winless teams. And it's crazy that I'm going to say this. Probably Hamilton and Edmonton haven't looked like winless teams, and Winnipeg has been the team that's more closely looked like a winless team. Edmonton's lost a lot of close games as well, as Hamilton. So, going to be interested to see how this one turns out, especially that the Lions are flying out to Hamilton. Business trip is obviously what the boys are going to say, but it is, a lot on your bodies. They did get the, extra few days rest, so hopefully they're rejuvenated, ready to come back in and get a dub and go back home and really get ready for a Western Division kind of powerhouse matchup here against Saskatchewan in a few weeks. But that being said, Blake, let's talk about the offensive side of the ball. We saw Vernon Adams take home the PFF Player of the Month. I know he was also the honorable mention, I believe, quarterback of the week from the PFF. So um, I'll give you the floor because I know you don't mind kind of talking about Vernon Adams and how good he is. But I think a lot of people still continue to doubt him outside the fan base and continue to um, not, I feel like, give him his flowers. I think, outside of a few throws throughout the season, Vernon Adams has been the best quarterback in the CFL, and that's not really, I feel like, a debate. Um, But anyways, what have you liked so far from Vernon Adams this season, and just how good he's been playing?
Yeah, no, I've definitely liked the way Vernon Adams has been playing. He's taking care of the ball, I
Yes, sir, Blake.
believe.
Yes, sir.
Um, I believe he did have an interception in the
He has one.
Toronto game, if
He's
I'm remembering correctly.
seven touchdowns to one interception right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I believe the one interception was in the Toronto game, but that would mean that the last now three games, Calgary, Winnipeg, yeah, three games that he has not thrown an interception. So yeah, he's definitely making smart decisions with the ball. And the other thing that I liked about him so far this year is he hasn't been afraid to run. You know, the pocket kind of collapses and whatever, and VA says, okay, you know what? I'm not going to take this unnecessary hit. I'm just going to escape the pocket. I'm going to get my 10, 15 yards, whatever it is, and then I'm going to slide down and we're going to live to fight another play, which I think is huge as you see guys like Zach Claros. He's now questionable for this week. He took a hit last week. I know he didn't practice yesterday. I didn't hear if he practiced today. A guy like Trevor Harris, who, for my Riders fans, Brian, if you're watching, I do feel truly bad for you guys. This is now year two in a row that they've lost Trevor Harris after a good start. But another guy like Jeremiah Masoli out in Ottawa, he's just been so injury prone, and it's really unfortunate because he's such a good quarterback. But it's been well documented that Brennan Adams in the past maybe hasn't made the best decisions. I think he's heard those critics and he's decided that he wants to kind of shut them down, if you will.
Yeah, before I get on to VA and taking care of the ball, which is what I've loved the most, I have to give my credit to and not ignore Cody Fajardo has also played pretty well this season. I think him and VA have been 1A, 1B this season as far as quarterbacks. But Vernon Adams, man, taking care of the football. Even when the run game hasn't been there, he's still taking care of the football. He still hasn't forced it, felt like he has to do too much. Blake, you know what I've said for so long that that's my only issue with Vernon Adams. I think he's a good enough quarterback that can win you a Grey Cup. It's the trying to do too much VA that I think comes out every once in a while, and he starts to make some dumb decisions. We have not seen that yet this season. One interception was at week one. Have not had a interception from him since. And even that's after, taking some hits there in the first few weeks. Calgary obviously didn't get to him sack wise, if I'm not mistaken. Calgary, Winnipeg didn't get to him. And then Edmonton. But, you know, after struggling in week one with it, Calgary comes out and they're sending the house with them, which he could have very easily. We saw that when last year, Blake, when he had the five interceptions or six interception game versus Toronto, he we was it hosted Montreal, I believe. The week after, he threw the next pass after that was a pick six that got called back. And you remember those things, so could have pressed right, could have been early there in at home, versus Calgary. Could have felt the pressure, could have turned over the football, right? Trying to get the ball out of his hands, trying to do too much. He didn't. He hasn't that this season. I think it's been a remarkable sight to see. And if you continue to do that, I think the Lions will be in good position. The only other thing I would like to see is just executing a little bit more when it comes to being inside the red zone, getting inside opponent's territory. We got to see more. I love Sean White. I know everybody loves good old Sean White, but I would love to see Sean White on the sideline with his ball cap. I think it's a Pepsi and some Welch's, whatever his little sideline routine is. And I would love to see him only come out for some extra points every so often because he's been bailing us out, which is good because when you have Mr. Automatic, when you have a guy that's on his, I believe, 28th consecutive field goal, such a good feeling when you can you get inside the 40-yard line of the opponent, 3 points is on the board right there pretty much. You need to get a little bit further maybe. Sean at his age doesn't have the strongest leg, but you get inside anywhere close to that 35. Sean White's coming out, he's making a field goal for you, you're putting 3 points on the board. So good sign, good thing to have, but let's try to have Sean White only come out for XP, save his leg for when it gets maybe later in the season, weather starts to become a factor, games start to get closer, all that sort of stuff. But Vernon Adams and the offense, I guess lastly, on offense, another good game, quiet game. And folks, to be honest, a quiet game is a good game for an offensive lineman. Quiet game again for Tyler Packer, Chris Schleger. Um, for the BC Lions, who have continued to fill in for David Neville, Michael Couture on the 6-game injured list. And I was talking about questions earlier in Toronto about quarterback. Is it maybe there are questions about if Michael Couture comes back? I don't think it's going to happen, but because Michael Couture is paid so much, um, I believe he's a top 10 paid offensive lineman, if I'm not mistaken. He's definitely one of the higher paid centers in the CFL, so I don't know if it's palatable to have him not on the roster. Maybe you could have him as a reserve in some sort of role, but Andrew Pearson already has that position, I feel like, locked up. Chris Schleger, I think, has more of a realistic opportunity to fend off David Neville when he comes back. David Neville was not playing great. Um, I feel like this was the last ditch effort to try to get some value out of the asset that was David Neville. BC Lions, obviously, high draft pick, was a tackle, if I'm not mistaken, who's converted to guard. A tackle that shouldn't be playing guard because he's I want to say like 6'6" or 6'7". At guard, you just have to bend a little bit more, and it's just um, with such his big frame, I just think he doesn't have it. Um, and no fault to his own. I think he was a serviceable, rotationable type player, but I think Chris Schleger's, you know, at least maintain or been a few ticks above when it comes to playing level and maintaining the position. So interested to see what happens there. But we also need to talk about Blake. Who do you think slots out? I think Stanley Berryhill. I didn't know actually if I seen him on the injury report, Blake. If you can remember, if did you look at the injury report today?
I did, yeah. The
What,
only wide receiver I remember seeing other than Keon, of course, was Ezekiel Tiade.
right,
He is
correct.
dealing with a knee injury, I believe, was listed on the injury report. But I don't remember seeing any other wide receivers listed on the injury report.
Yeah, so you're correct. Keon, Ezekiel. Hollins, but Hollins
Oh,
limited
that's
with
right.
a hammy.
Hollins has a hamstring issue. That's
Right.
right.
Nothing about Stanley Berryhill, who was in and out of last week's game. Personally, love what I've seen from Aiden Eberhardt. I think the easy answer, probably, Blake, is to have Stanley Berryhill come out. It seems like he has been, of the four receivers that have been, probably the more inconsistent of the four, or the five, I guess I should say, and has been a little bit, obviously, in and out of the lineup the last game. So I would think, Keon's coming back here. If I'm Stanley, I'm trying to make the biggest and best impression here in the final 2 weeks. But Blake, do you think it's pretty much a layup that Stanley Berryhill comes out when Keon slots back in?
Yeah, I think it pretty much is. Like you said, Cole, Aiden Eberhart showed really well last week. We kind of wondered out loud on last week's show what would happen with Eberhart with Fulgham being released, and Eberhart showed really well. I don't have the stats in front of me. I'm kind of on the commute for my way home, but I do remember being in the building. He made at least 4 or 5 catches, which almost I think was his combined season total from the first 3 weeks. So it looks like he's definitely building that trust with VA. And of course, we know that Alex Hollins and Justin McInnes, they for sure are not coming out of the lineup when Hatcher comes out. So it kind of comes down to Berryhill, Eberhart, and on a lesser scale, Ezekiel Tiade.
Yeah, I agree. Um, my guess is Day probably comes out of the lineup. Yeah, Berryhill goes to that reserve role. They find a way to get a reserved national somewhere else. Day obviously being that reserved player is a national play special teams, but I think you could probably find another position somewhere that's able to play special teams. Haven't really noticed Day too much on special teams. I don't know about you, Blake, but Aiden Eberhart last
Or at
week,
all.
obviously seven targets, 6 receptions, 78 yards, and also drew a big time pass interference that
Pass
helped
interference. That's
the
right.
Lions put some points on the board. So it could have been Moore also had the deep pass that was incomplete as well, so could have had over 100 yards for sure. Could have had some more impact on the game. I've liked what I've seen from Aiden Eberhard. I was actually able to interact with him, Blake, which was cool about the media pass and stuff like that after the game. Leaving the tunnel there, he was getting out of his pads or whatever. I was able to kind of wish him well and tell him that he played a good game, as well as obviously my slight connection. I played junior football obviously with the Vancouver Island Raiders, and he knows some people that play there currently. So I was able to say, I played for the Raiders where Blaze and Sadler's their names play right now, and just kind of wanted to you played really well today, and I've liked what you've seen, kind of thing. So it was cool. From all we've heard, Aiden's a good guy. I know we kind of interact with him a little bit at fan day and stuff like that, and he seems like the perfect person to get
We
some
do.
success like this, get an opportunity like this, because he works for everything that he gets. So excited to see what Aiden can continue to do in
Possibly
his
a
first
future
year
guest on the
starting.
show.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. We'd love to have him on. Personally, Blake, he is, I don't believe, a former teammate of Josh Allen, but he threw, or excuse me, caught for Josh Allen on his pro day. I would definitely have to fangirl out a little bit and ask him maybe a question or two about Josh. Maybe he FaceTimes him for me, and we get Josh Allen on the show. We could put that in the title. But all jokes aside, we'll definitely maybe hit up Aiden, and we'd love to get him on the show sometime, maybe this season or maybe even the off season if that works out better for Aiden. But let's get into the defense, Blake, before we get to some CFL quick picks with Shane Ryan here in a matter of 10 or so minutes. And on defense,
Cole,
we're going
Cole,
to see Josh
before,
Woods. Yep.
sorry, buddy. Before we go to the defense, do you want to do the defense first and then go to your rant, or do you want to leave the rant for another day?
Um, we will leave the rant for after. Just remind me. You're talking about the November 11th or 17th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave that for after. Just remind me. We'll thank you for actually saying that. Um, Remind me after we do quick picks. We'll end the show that way. We'll end the show with a little bit of fire. Hopefully, a lot of people are tuned in by then. 67 of you tuned in across YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff. Blake and I appreciate it so much. If you guys are tuning in on Twitter, head over to the YouTube, please, and subscribe. 75% of you guys are not, and would be awesome if you guys did. So. Blake, remind me please later before we end the show. I will put it in my notes, so hopefully I don't forget. But I am a meathead, so it can tend to happen from time to time. So Blake, Josh Woods will slide out of the lineup, and I am curious how things are going to play out now. We are probably going to see, I would think, Bo stay as the uh, Sam linebacker. Um, or excuse me, the Will linebacker. Um, and I don't know how if it's obviously I believe his real name's not Ace Ely. I believe it's
Charles, I believe it is his given
yeah,
name.
is his given name. Thank you, Blake.
Charles
But
or Charles or Chuck. I believe it's one of the two. Jay,
yeah,
if you're
but
watching, help us out.
I don't think Jay's actually watching tonight. But Ace is what they, I believe, call him, or is his nickname. So Ace Ely obviously came in for Josh Woods last week after the injury. Now I'm curious because of how high they are on Ryder Varga. Do they possibly look at considering Ryder Varga and/or Bola Kumble to go into the middle? And I'm curious if they go with two nationals at linebacker. Might be a little bit hard because obviously you have Patrice Rene, who's at Sam, who's a Canadian as well. So I'm not too sure how the ratio would work out that way. I guess I could quickly
Well,
actually
the
see here.
ratio is kind of a minimum Canadians, right? Like
Right, I
that.
guess, yeah.
I think you can play more Canadians.
Um, so yeah, I guess I could work out. Um, I'm curious because I didn't see anything wrong with Ace Ely's play last week, but he also didn't impress me. He was, I believe, in on the 9 play, 109-yard drive that really irked me for the Edmonton Elks. They really marched the ball down the field on the BC Lions defense, and I believe that was early on in the fourth quarter there when they put up
Yeah,
points.
it was
Took the
after the Mackey fumble.
Yeah, took the lead. Was definitely took a lot of air out of the BC place. Uh, so he was in on that drive. That being said, though, he was not picked on. He was not, from what I remember, not in coverage of any plays. So not that he played bad in any way, but I just think that the BC, from what we've heard, BC is super high on Ryder Varga. That he's a draft pick. Bo, I think, is probably going to be penciled in as a starter, uh, because you want that veteran now that Josh is gone. Ben's obviously going to come back play. I guess so. Yeah, excuse me. Ben will come back play. I guess middle, but I guess Josh was playing
Middle
that. So yeah, I guess
linebacker. Yeah,
that's going to be the question, I guess, is kind of who plays middle, and then they're going to, I guess, pick between. It'll be the four of Ace Ely, Ben Hladek, uh, Bo Lacumbo, Ryder Varga. Ben Hladek played some MAC last season. They wanted Josh Woods to play there this season, so I'm curious to see maybe Ben has to slide back into the middle, having he played it last year. Him coming off the hand procedure, like I mentioned, Blake, it wasn't anything too serious. I believe it was more precautious than anything. The goal was to have the procedure so we could play on Thursday. Must have been, maybe just didn't feel right, didn't want to risk it. Whatever happened, um, all signs have been go. Wasn't even on the injury report this week, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I looked quickly, but I didn't check for linebackers, which I should have.
yeah. I was
Um,
gonna say, I don't remember. Was Hladek on the injury report today?
I'll quickly I'll quickly look because I don't think he was. No, so he was, but he was full participant. It was a thumb. So it's nice that it was clarified as a thumb injury instead of a hand injury. We know what it is. But he was a full participant. So, like mentioned, I think it was more precautious than anything. Just didn't want to risk it. They have the depth at linebacker. Little do they know that Josh Woods is about to go down for a season-ending injury during the game. I think Ben most likely probably slides to playing Mac. I think that's probably the most seamless of transitions instead of having Ben stay at Will, having Ace play Mac, Bo go back to that kind of reserve role. I think it's more likely that Ben goes to Mac and Bo slides to that Will linebacker or stays at Will. Because they've already played together, I think it's just a more seamless transition. No offense to AC Lee, but I think that's more likely than not going to happen. But Blake, what do you think maybe is going to happen with the linebacker position on Sunday?
Yeah, I think probably that, as you said, of course, Ben Hladek will come back. I think they won't change too much from Thursday. So I think that Ace Ely will be the other linebacker. What I'm interested to see, though, is, as we already mentioned earlier in the show, TJ Lee, of course, practicing in full today, will not play this week. Him and Keon aren't eligible yet. I believe the first week they're eligible is next week. Um, but I'm interested to see what happens when TJ comes back with Ronald Kent Jr. Is he, of course, really impressed in preseason? He was the focus, or at least one of the focuses, of the training camp arrow up. Not that that makes any difference during the season. That's just kind of a media thing. But he hasn't impressed, at least in my mind, here at the beginning of the year. So I think that when TJ does come back, he's the most likely to come out. But are the Lions willing to kind of pull the shoot on him this early, especially when, if you look at it that way, they kind of traded Marcus Sales for Ronald Kent Jr.?
I think he comes out for sure, Blake. I don't think it's a question because I think the question more is does Deontay Evans play good enough? We obviously saw him have the interception last week, had a beautiful step in front of the pass from MBT. Was I actually got a clip, which is cool. I was trying to post it, but I forgot of a miscommunication with him and Ronald Kent. Ronald Kent's, I'm gonna guess his bad because of the way that Shanti Evans reacted, his body language. Um, I think it's a no brainer. Ronald Kent comes out. I think the question is, does Deontay Evans do enough to stay at corner? Um, If they don't like what they see, do they slide him back to his natural position of half, and then you start to play around with, Manny Rugumba's playing halfback right now in the boundary. Played well, I would say. Hasn't played phenomenal by any means, but hasn't played bad. Do you move him back to his natural position of Sam, where Patrice Rene has played? Although Patrice Rene has been playing very well, he just had probably his best game of the
He
season, the best
has.
game as a BC Lion. So I'm not sure because Manny's obviously more of a Sam who just transitioned to half, and kind of you're playing essentially playing the same position, so it's not really um, you're not switching too much of a role. Just switching to Sam, you'll be more involved in the box a little bit more. Excuse me. I would think I would think Manny is going to stay at half. They're going to bring TJ in and keep Ciante at corner. But that being said, it's just interesting because Ciante, I believe, is a natural half, and is getting up there in age. So curious to see what happens. I think Ronald Kent's the for sure guy that comes out, and your five members of the secondary are Gary Peters, Manny Rugamba, Adrian Green, TJ Lee, and Ciante Evans. I just don't know what order that's going to be in. So we'll be curious to see. Lastly, before we get into our CFL quick picks this week, the defensive line, Blake. Let's get into it. I think some bright spots have been first and foremost the addition of Pete Robertson, who's continued to get on the board sack wise as well as get some pressures, create some havoc. Had a big pressure on MBT there in the fourth quarter, made it an incomplete pass, was able to hit him and kind of make the ball just basically go into the dirt right at the line of scrimmage there. So been a great addition. Now that being said, I've definitely wanted a lot more from the rest of the position. Some of those guys in the interior, Josh Banks, Marcus Moore, Thibaut Debaye, a little bit harder to impact games um, as a defensive tackle. I think they've done their job decently when it comes to run defending, holding their gaps, keeping their linebackers clean. Now, that being said, going to be a little bit hypocritical here. I would love to see some more from Christian Covington. Obviously, he plays defensive tackle, like I
That's the
just
name that
mentioned.
I was going to say.
Hard to get some production at defensive tackle, like I just mentioned. That being said, would like to see him just be a little bit more impactful. Doesn't have to be sack wise and stuff like that. Just like I was saying in the preseason, which I didn't want to hold on to, stuff in the preseason. Was able to watch him a few snaps in the preseason, really keep an eye on him, see what he was doing. He was dominating. Obviously, now I look back at it, it's a lot of second and third teamers that the Elks were dressing. When I was up top there in the press box, Blake, I was able to a few plays remember. Okay, let's keep an eye on Christian Covington. Let's see what he does this play. Was fairly underwhelmed. Um, wasn't a whole lot of plays, right? It was maybe I would say 4 to 6 plays anywhere from there. There was one rep that he won for sure, but I would say the other five it was more of a stalemate than anything. Not much uh, pressure, not much pushing the pocket, so not really gaining much ground on the offensive lineman. So that's kind of what I mean by stalemate. Would like to see him just push the offensive lineman back a little bit more, create that power, create that little bit of chaos in the backfield where the quarterback says, "Oh my God, the guard just got shot back, uh, you know, a foot and a half, 2 feet, right?" And that's about the only thing. Other than that, I don't need to see him getting a crazy amount of sacks. And lastly, before I pass it over to you, Blake, about the defensive line, Sione Tiama has got far too many 15-yard penalties this year. He's been effective, and I think he's been contributing when it comes to the run defense, and he's had a fair share of tackle for losses as well. But I think he's up to maybe 3 or 4 now. If it's close to a 15-yarder a game, just not good when it comes discipline wise. And I'm curious if John Bowman, Rick Campbell have had that conversation with him. But what do you think about Christian Covington and the rest of the defensive line, Blake?
Yeah, I would agree with you that Christian Covington has been underwhelming so far. He only has one sack on the year, and it was kind of I don't like this word too much, but I can't think of another one at this exact moment. It was kind of a meaningless sack. It was after Sean White had kicked the field goal that put the Lions up by 9 in the home opener. Calgary wasn't going to win the game. There was like 30 seconds left, and Covington got the sack on, I believe, what was the second to last play of the game. Other than that, I haven't really noticed him. You're more astute at looking at players kind of play by play than I am. So I haven't really thought to, hey, look, here's number 96, I believe he wears. Let's watch him go up against the O line on this play. But yeah, other than that, Simone Tuhema, you mentioned his penalty problems. Thibaut Debaye, he's another one. They combined for that strip sack and the fumble recovery for a touchdown in the Toronto game. But other than that, they haven't done much. So the only one that's really impressed me out of the five on the defensive line is Pete Robertson, as I believe he has 2 or 3 sacks on the season now. He's had some pressures as well. So he's the one that's impressed me the most. But I definitely like to see a lot more from the defensive line, especially this week against a Hamilton team as we mentioned, that has looked better, especially offensively this year than they did last year. But Bo Levi Mitchell is a late 30s quarterback, so he does not move nearly as well as he used to. And if you can get some pressure on him, you are probably going to get a few sacks in that football game.
Yes, the old wily vet, Pete Robertson. We should have known that he probably would have, came in, had some production here. And something that I probably should have been a little bit more concerned about this coming to this year, and maybe I was a little bit more high on Sione Tehema in terms of total sack numbers. I think we're missing a guy opposite of Pete Robertson right now to get to the quarterback. We saw it last year. Matthew Betts, David Menard were able to have
Yeah.
both, I believe, double-digit sacks, and I think Pete Robertson needs somebody riding shotgun with him. I don't know if somebody's doing that right now with him. That being said, I think it can be somebody inside as well. Covington could start to take over and start to help him get one-on-ones, because I think it won't be long before Pete Robertson starts to get game plan for, start to get chips and stuff like that. Won't obviously fully try to take out Pete Robertson because he's not a game wrecker, but they'll start to throw chips at him. They'll start to running backs will start to ID him, and coming out of the backfield they'll give him like I mentioned, chips here and there, and they will even just leave backs in the backfield to just straight up give assistance to the tackles. That being said, Blake, I think that is all when it comes to the BC Lions traveling to take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats this week, and we can get into our picks this week. Is there anything else, Blake, that comes to mind for BC going to Hamilton? Blake, can you hear me? I'm guessing that's a negative, so I will move on, and we will get
No, I
to
just
our.
think that as you
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Blake.
no, I was just gonna say that as you mentioned earlier in the show, I hope that we can see a full 60-minute game from the BC Lions. I mean, Hamilton is Hamilton. With all due respect to Ticats fans, they're an 0-4 team for a reason. Put them down early, kind of keep them down, win the game by 10 plus points.
Absolutely. So, 75 people tuning in here tonight to the Canadian Football Fanatics Weekly Show. We thank each and every one of you guys. If you guys are not subscribed on YouTube, please do so now. Head over there. You guys continue watching the rest of the show. If you guys are on Twitter, I was going to say as well as Instagram, please just continue to follow us, share, and comment all of our good content we got going on over there as well. Blake, let's get into it without further ado. Let's bring in our main man over at 13th Man Sports, Shane Ryan, to do some CFL quick picks this week. Shane, thanks for joining us once again. How you doing, buddy?
Uh-oh. Do we have Shane?
Yeah, we're good.
What's going on, Shane? How you doing, buddy?
Not bad. How are you
guys? Surviving.
Yeah, another Wednesday, another, halfway through the week. But let's get into it, boys. Without further ado, we have an exciting matchup to start the week tomorrow. We have Toronto going to Riderville to take on the undefeated Saskatchewan Roughriders without Trevor Harris. We have Shea Patterson, who will be under center for the Riders tomorrow. I will go to Blake first, change things up. Who are you picking and why?
This is a game that I thought long and hard about, and my pick might surprise both of you, but I think the Saskatchewan Roughriders are going to stay undefeated after week number 5, their week number 4, coming off the bye last week. Shea Patterson, he had an impressive preseason. He didn't look very good when he came in relief of Trevor Harris in their game a couple weeks ago. But I don't think that Shea Patterson's going to have to do a lot, to be completely honest with both of you. I think this is a game where someone like AJ Ouellette, who in the first 2 weeks was quite underwhelming, in week number 3 was a little bit better. But I think AJ Ouellette is going to step up big for the Saskatchewan Roughriders in this football game. And I think another guy like Ajoa Joe, I believe Sean Bain is questionable for this game. So I think Ajoa Joe is going to step up big. And also, you guys have to remember that this is Cameron Duke's first road start. He had 3 straight home starts to start his CFL tenure. This is the first time that he's going to have to go against hostile territory. We saw he didn't look very good against the Alouettes last week, and I think that continues again this week.
All right. Blake taking the Saskatchewan Roughriders to stay undefeated, setting up a thriller July 13th. Shane, I will go to you next, buddy. Who you picking and why?
Yeah, so I've been kind of teetering on this one a little bit. Um, I'm taking Toronto. I like Shea Patterson. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback. He's making his first career CFL start. The team around him isn't that good, all things considered. Um, I just think Toronto is a more well-rounded team. It's a more, you know, um, concrete team, more consistent team. Yes, Cameron Dukes didn't look that great against Montreal, but like let's be honest, no quarterback has looked phenomenal. It's kind of hard to fault them. Um, I think Toronto. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be a tight-scoring game. I have them at under 48.5 points, but I do have Toronto winning by 4.5 or more. I have them on the 4.5 spread. Um, I don't know what to expect from Patterson, and there's too many unknowns for me to feel confident taking the Rough Riders. I'm honestly surprised how big of a gap it is on the money line. It's like they're plus 180. The Argos are minus 220. I definitely thought that gap would be a little bit smaller between the two teams, but I have the Argos coming out on top in a low scoring, probably like 24-19, 25-20 type, like very low scoring field goals, not as many touchdowns. But yeah, I have them at a low scoring game. I have Saskatchewan under 20.5 points. I think this is a game that like it's gonna be boring. Like if you're not a defensive fan, it's gonna be boring.
Yeah, so I too went back and forth on who to pick. Ultimately, similar to Shane, I think I trust the Argos and Cameron Dukes a little bit more than Shea Patterson-led Riders. Um, like Blake was mentioning, Patterson had a decent preseason, enough to give him the job of backup quarterback. Um, and I think the Riders have a decent enough offense to maybe keep a decent hold to their level that maybe not Trevor Harris has been playing to, but to win a game or two here and there throughout the 6 games that he's gone. That being said, I just don't think it's tomorrow versus Toronto. I think they're too strong in the line of scrimmage, being able to keep Cameron Dukes on the field. Obviously, like I was talking about earlier, I think they've reined him back quite a bit, and would like to see him maybe let go a little bit more, and give him a few more passing attempts per game and stuff like that. I believe he's, like I mentioned, pretty low, or by a reasonable amount, the least attempted starting quarterback in the CFL through 4 weeks. But I just got to take Toronto. I think defensively they're going to be able to play, keep it low scoring, like Shane mentioned. And ultimately, I'm going to go with Toronto to beat Saskatchewan tomorrow night. So let's get to Friday night's football, and I will pass it to Shane first for the Ottawa Red Blacks versus the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Who do you got and why, Shane?
I unfortunately will not be able to watch the game on Friday. going to a Nickelback concert.
Oh, okay, that's
So
pretty cool.
I unfortunately will not be able to watch it live. I will be recording it and watching it Saturday. Um, this one's actually a pretty interesting one. It doesn't. Zach Larson seems to be a game time decision. Um, excuse me. So I don't know if Strevler, if he starts, if he's good enough throwing the ball to win. Um, and a full 60 minutes, I don't know if he can get it done. So I have Ottawa winning. Um, I'm honestly really surprised about this line. Uh, Ottawa for like I don't know what it is. I don't know what Winnipeg has on odds makers this year, but I've never seen an 0-4 team go into a game and be the favorites.
Everybody's waiting for the bounce back though. They just don't understand. I think that the bounce back's not coming because the injuries are like you're just not
Yeah,
recovering from what they've lost.
like Kenny Lawler's out for another 2-3 weeks potentially. Like there's no update on. I haven't seen any updates on him. Um,
Yeah.
Dalton Schoen's out for the rest of the year. Brady Oliveira is not 100%. Like they can say he's 100%. He can try to tell people he's 100%. If you watched him last week, he is not 100%. Like there's and Caleros is hurt.
I just think, yeah, there's a lot of compounding issues as well. They don't really use a lot of quick game. That doesn't really help out their offensive line, and they like to drop back and pass, which stresses their offensive line. They haven't been able to protect Claros as good as they have in the past, and I just think um, odds makers are waiting for that bounce back. I have now probably jumped on the bandwagon. I just don't think it's coming. It's coming because it's not their year, right? They've had the previous, how many good seasons where they've been in the mix. I just think it's, one of those years where they maybe have to reevaluate. But continue, Shane. Sorry to take up.
Hey, no, I mean, yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those things. They're minus 155. Ottawa is plus 135. I have Ottawa winning. I just think that the team is starting to turn around. You've started to see kind of the glimpses of what this offense can be last week against Hamilton. Um, they need to play a little bit stronger on the ball. They've had 4 fumbles over the last 2 games, and all 4 have led to either points being put up by the opposing team or points being taken off the board um, for Ottawa. So I think they need to clean up their ball security. I mean, week 1 or week 2, their home opener, they did have a single turnover against Winnipeg. Um, but I have Ottawa winning this. Um, if I'm gonna have my bets out tomorrow morning, so you guys can take a look on the website. I've been flip flopping between taking Ottawa money line at plus 135 or the Ottawa spread at plus 120. I'm kind of leaning the money line because at that point I'm going to take the 15-point difference. I think they're going to win outright anyways. I think Ottawa's going to put up some points, and I think Strevler is going to struggle. So I have over 45 and a half points, and then under 23 and a half points for the Blue Bombers. And that parlay is plus 550. So you'll be able to see this on the website tomorrow. But I think Ottawa they're starting to come into their own. I think they're going to utilize Armstead a little bit more. They're going to be protective. Their defense is getting healthier. I think Winnipeg's reign in the league is over after 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Blake, I'm going Ottawa as well. I will pass it to you. Who you picking and why?
Yeah, I was gonna pick Winnipeg to get their first win of the season in this game. I think it was about time for them to. But after listening to you guys talk, and more importantly, I kind of had forgotten that Chris Strebler might be the starting quarterback on Friday night. I mentioned earlier that Zach Claros missed practice yesterday, and it still slipped my mind that yeah, whatever, he missed practice. It was a personal day. Like he'll start on Friday, and then I was thinking to you guys talking, I was like, oh wait, no, like he's injured. Like he might actually miss this game. And I just don't trust Chris Strebler enough. Coach O'Shea can say all he wants that he left Strebler in against Calgary for precautionary reasons, but you don't leave your starting quarterback on the sideline if he's completely healthy. To me, that screams one of two things. Either Zach Collaros is truly hurt and he's not going to play this week, or that Mike O'Shea has been so upset with his performance so far this year that he just didn't trust him to go out and win them a football game on Saturday afternoon. And either one of those is a very, very scary thought for Winnipeg Blue Bombers fans. So with all that being said, I think I am going to switch my pick to the same as the two of you, and I will pick the Ottawa Redblacks to send the four-time defending Western champions to an 0-5 start. And the question I'll pose to both of you is, what kind of changes do you think would happen if that does in fact happen, including 2 losses to these Ottawa Redblacks?
I think before Shane goes, there wouldn't be too many changes from a head office coaching standpoint. I think Mike O'Shea's pretty safe. I think where it would come is the writing would be on the wall to reload in a sense where they still have guys like Brady Oliveira. They still have Nick Dempsey's loyal. I would think his plans are to stick around there. Dalton Schoen's signed back there. I believe through 2026. Brady. So you have kind of your crew. Kenny's obviously getting older. Zach has looked not great this year, but I would think they're gonna maybe that is where the things start to maybe the question, I guess, is maybe it's Zach's time to maybe they look somewhere else where it's a year or two step back. I don't know if I would totally get on board. I think where I would have to try to get, and it's tough, I guess, because free agencies, you kind of made your bed with some of your skill position players, but try to get younger offense in the offensive line, and then I guess defensively try to remake that as well. Willie Jefferson has been a stalwart for so long, but I feel like he's getting older and his impact's starting to become less and less. And he's also just missing somebody that's beside him to rush with him, create those other mismatches for him to get one-on-one, stuff like that. So I would think in those areas they would try to reload, but maybe I think the better question is it Zach Collaros' time to leave Winnipeg and maybe they look for another option at quarterback? But Shane, is there anything that comes to mind for you?
So my hot take is Byron Scott out of Toronto will go to Winnipeg, or they take Trey Ford out of Edmonton in the offseason. They're like,
wow,
you need to see what happens with Strebler. Like, if Collaros is out 2-3 weeks, I don't know exactly when their bye is. I think they have a week 8 bye. But if you go into that week 8 bye 0-7, you're kind of looking at things a lot differently than if you go into that bye week at 2-5 or 3-4. And don't quote me on that exact bye week. I don't know exactly when it is, but the point still stands. If you can win a couple of games going into your bye week, you have a chance. I mean, think about it. Edmonton's still 0-4. Hamilton's 0-4.
2-1. Calgary
2-1. Saskatchewan's 3-0. BC's 3-1. But Trevor Harris is hurt. Who knows how long he's hurt? You don't know what Shea Patterson can have. The season isn't over. But realistically, the season is not over for Winnipeg. They can't do any panic moves. But I think
it is over, Shane. They're done. It's over.
I don't think so. If they can get a couple of wins over the next 4 weeks and go, 3-for-4, 2-for-6, especially against the Western opponents, they can build that momentum. I don't want to cut and say that they're going to be the worst team in the league, because they're still.
Oh, come on, just say it. They stink.
They haven't played great, that's for sure. But I think injuries have a lot to do with that, and I think they deserve Mike O'Shea and co deserve a little bit of benefit of the doubt that this is more the luck of the draw versus them not being able to coach their team.
That's
But
exactly why the betting lines are like that though, because they expect Winnipeg to come. Like it's a matter
exactly.
of time. Is basically what they're saying.
And again, I don't think they're going to be like, I don't think they're going to beat, like, if they make the playoffs, they're not beating BC. They're not going to, beat a fully healthy Saskatchewan team, in my opinion. Um, but right now, there's nothing stopping them from being that third. Like, it's not like Calgary's been world beaters either. Like, Calgary could easily be 0-3 versus 2-1. Like, Calgary isn't like hasn't been as dominant either. So yes, 0-4 looks bad. It's the same thing with Edmonton. It's not like Edmonton's played bad either. They could easily be 4-0 if you look at their games. The last 3 games they've lost by like 9 points total. So I still think it's too early to write them off, but I will say that I think if Strevler can't win them games and Caleros comes back and he's struggling, Byron Scott out of Toronto, if they want to make a trade, because if what's his name comes back, and Toronto takes him back and he's back, there's not really room for him. Unless Cameron Dukes craps the bed, which I don't think he's going to do. Or they're going to say, okay, it's a lost season. There's, we've had injuries, a lot of uncontrollables, but it's clear that Caleros took a step back. Let's go get Ford. But let's go out. If he hits free agency, heck, let's trade for his rights. Edmonton doesn't have a first round pick. They gave it up in the supplementary draft. Is there a possibility that they trade their first round pick for Trey Ford at the end of the season, or even before the
And,
end of the season?
and reunite the brothers too. You,
Exactly. Like, I think Trey Ford in Winnipeg is the most intriguing trade chip. If you're Edmonton and you're any other fan in the league, because you want him to start. Like, he's 26, 27 now. Like, you want him to start. So if they go into their bye week and they haven't won a game in their bye week, I would not be shocked if we see or hear about Edmonton or Winnipeg reaching out to Edmonton, being like, "Hey, yo, what is it going to cost us to pick Trey Ford out of Edmonton, because he's a free agent now, like in February. You don't
you're
have
gonna
a
lose them
first
for nothing.
pick. I'll give you our first round pick, which might look like it'll be the first overall pick for Trey Ford."
Yeah,
I'm not gonna
honestly,
lie, Trey
didn't I?
Ford in that offense is going to be nasty. It's not what it
I
is.
honestly, Shane didn't have that thought come to my mind once. The CFL fan in me, when you said that, absolutely loves the fit. I think that would be fantastic having Buck Pierce as offensive coordinator. Although maybe that's another scapegoat that could be out of Winnipeg if the struggles continue, because it's been a lot of offensive struggles. But Trey Ford in Winnipeg, man, holy smokes! I pray they do not. I would send first rounder tomorrow, my man, for Trey Ford. Just for the simple
Exactly.
fact of Zach Collaros' age. Even if he doesn't pan out, you take the shot because it's your hopeful kind of bridge to the future with this core. You already have everybody under contract for the most part, and you try to take a swing to keep Winnipeg afloat. I love the idea. I'm curious to know if it's more like us talk more so than like in the building. These are some of the conversations that are had with, I believe it's
I
Kyle Walters, GM of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who has been, one of the better GMs in the CFL here, and has been a big reason of kind of building Winnipeg the last few years. I'm curious if that is starting to, the
I
gears are starting to shift in his mind of, maybe this is an opportunity for us to get younger at quarterback. And, no offense to Zach, it is a business at the end of the day. No matter what you've done for us, what you brought us, we're looking to continue to try to win games. So I would love to know if that's actually a conversation going on, or if that's more so of banter for us to kind of go off about. But who knows? Because I think that's juicy and should be conversated about for sure.
I just don't.
But
I mean, they're going to give Strevler the opportunity to
yeah,
win games. So even if it is a conversation, I don't see them being in a rush to do it, because they want to give Strevler the opportunity to win or lose them games. And depending on how Strevler plays, will directly impact the route they go. If Strebler wins them games and plays fine and, is serviceable and a quality quarterback, you probably don't see anything happen. But if they're losing games, he's not playing well. He's putting up under 200 yards. His completion percentage is between like 50 and 60%. He's having interception problems, things like that. That's where the conversation starts, and that's where I think Trey Ford in Edmonton makes the most sense if the struggles offensively continue.
Okay, so let's
for
get
the
into
record, their bye week is week 10.
Oh, thank you.
okay, so a couple extra
So
weeks.
you got
So
even
let's
though
get
0 and
into
9. I mean, at 0 and 9,
yeah,
they may as well
you
make
have a
that work.
runway.
Yeah, you got
But
you got 6 weeks left basically. You got 5 weeks left to see how the team does. If you're 0 and 9 or you're 2 and 7, you have to do something. You have to make a change. And I think Ford out of Edmonton is just too good to pass up.
yeah, absolutely. So let's get into Saturday's matchup, boys. And the Calgary Stampeders are traveling to Montreal. I will go quick. I'm taking Montreal. They have looked way too dominant. They are in a class of their own as of now, still early in the season, but Montreal has looked way too dominant offensively, defensively, and I think they choked the life out of Calgary. I'm not saying it's going to be a lopsided score or high scoring. I just think they win. Montreal's looked fantastic this year. I'm going to take them this week. I will go to Blake first.
Yeah, I'm going to take Montreal as well. I mean, I don't think we really need to spend much time on this game. Jake Maier's looked better,
Watch Shane's
but
going to pick Calgary.
but he's still Jake Maier. They were lucky to beat Winnipeg last week, even with an injured Zach Claros for an entire half. Without Rene Paredes, I think they're probably 0-3. I'm trying to remember Hamilton in week number 1. So their record is deceiving, but I think Montreal wins in a convincing cakewalk, I'll call it.
Shane, who you picking and why?
So I'm just going to say I had Calgary last week, and that game going to overtime saved my entire parlay. So I can't even hate on Calgary because I went 3 for 3 against that game against Winnipeg because it went to overtime. So respect to them. But I got Montreal. Like it's not even a question. And like obviously any team could beat any team any given week in pro sports. But the way Montreal's defense has been playing, Collaros has been able to keep the ball and do the things to not cost Montreal games and not put their defense in negative situations has been the reason why they're 4-0. I think the spread is a big indicator of how both teams are viewed. The spread is plus 9.5 or minus 9.5 for Montreal. They're like minus 440. Like Montreal is such big favorites in this game that if you want to hit big, and you have like $100 to spare, yeah, put it on Calgary. Put your $100.
I was gonna say I might just put $5 on Calgary for the fun of it.
Like, if you want to hit a little bit of extra money, putting it on the money line or the spread on Calgary, you're gonna make some money back. But I think overall, this game should be Montreal. Montreal should be able to not handily win, but I think 10 or more points should be doable. But again, I think Calgary they could easily be 0-3. I would say maybe 1-2 because they did play really well against Hamilton. But their last 2 games, they weren't overly dominant. They could be 1-2. So I don't know. I think this game will show if this is a trap game though for Montreal. Let's be real.
Okay.
They're going in 4-0. They're coming off a team on a bye. Coming into your home stadium.
Calgary hasn't looked impressive.
They haven't looked impressive. They don't their receivers haven't looked that well overall. Their defense has kind of looked a little shoddy. This could easily be a trap game for Montreal. So if they need to come in, be prepared, be ready mentally, and just take them seriously. If not, it could go sideways for Montreal really quickly because they do have some ballers in Calgary that can make them pay if they're not playing 100%.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
other
Um,
Philpott, to name one.
yeah.
Philpott,
Um,
Bergen, Beggleton,
Michelle.
um, Michelle,
Dedrick
like,
Mills.
yeah, like,
He's an
they have,
underrated running back.
yeah, who knows? Maybe, if, they also have Matthew Schultz if they want to change things up. Like, I think this could be a trap game for Montreal. So I'm saying if you want to make some money, might be worth putting on Calgary. You might be able to get lucky here on the trap game, but I think the safe bet is taking Montreal.
That's why they play the damn game, I believe is what they say. You never know
Exactly.
on any given.
The championships were awarded based off paper, no reason for a season.
Yes, sir. Any given Saturday, in this case, on Saturday Night Football in Montreal. Lastly, we have our BC Lions, Blake. I will go to Shane first because no need to. Blake and I are picking the Lions, obviously. And like we mentioned, we talked about it a little bit before we were joined by Shane. Huge respect to Hamilton coming in 0-4. Shane, we talked about it, me and Blake, that the Lions have played the last 3 weeks winless teams that pretty much other than Winnipeg haven't really looked like winless teams. Obviously, Edmonton's played a lot. You mentioned the losses by 9 points combined. I feel like Hamilton's looked a lot better than an 0-4 team as well. I did eat crow on, Bo Levi Mitchell and kind of how much he's looked better this season. Um, and I think it's a dangerous game for the Lions. That being said, I just think overall the Lions are a better team. Now, whether they maybe lean their hat on it too much, I think they are able to find a way to win. Hopefully, it's not flipping the switch late here and kind of trying to win late. I don't love the process of how the Lions have been winning the last or to start the season. That being said, I still think they have enough firepower. Vernon Adams is still playing 1A, 1B with Cody Fajardo in terms of best quarterbacks in the CFL. I think they're able to get it done. Now, my thing would be just don't let them hang around because anything can happen. And if Hamilton's able to get last possession, maybe you're now not able to get as lucky this week and come out with a victory. So I got BC. I know Blake's got BC. Shane, who
Yeah.
are you picking and why?
Don't hate me, but
Hamilton?
I'm taking Hamilton.
That's fine. That's fine.
So the reason why I think it depends on Butler. I think Butler is the deciding factor on how well Hamilton will play. BC's run defense still hasn't looked that great. Um, it looked like Bo Levi and Tim White have started to get that connection. Tim White was able to produce a little bit in against Ottawa last week. He got his first receiving touchdown of the year on the first drive. I think the offense is finally starting to come together. Their defense looks sharp. I think the deciding factor. I overheard you guys talking about Christian Covington early or like before I came on. Um, can that D line put pressure on Bo Levi? That's gonna be a huge thing. Ottawa had 2 sacks against him and was able to create pressure, get him out of the pocket. Um, but it's gonna be that running game. They didn't have Hamilton didn't have Butler last week, and it was evident during their play calling. They ran a lot. I think Bo Levi threw 45 passes because they didn't have Butler in the backfield. So if Butler's healthy, and I think he's expected to play, won't know until Friday or Saturday whenever they release the depth chart. But I think Butler's going to just if you can limit Butler to under like 80 yards, BC should have a good enough chance to win. I think it's if you get to 85, 90, 95 yards on the ground by Butler alone is kind of where you guys are going to struggle because I just haven't seen that run defense being able to step up on a consistent basis to make a stop when needed. It's usually passing downs. Your secondary doing most of the work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think all fair points, Shane, which are all hard to disagree with. But I think that's also to maybe speak from a Lions perspective, which gives me a lot of hope going later into the season because the Lions have yet to play perfect football. They've yet to play consistent football. They haven't played, I would say, even a consistent half of football yet. And I think that's coming here later in the season. Now, I agree with you. I think this is a perfect opportunity for Hamilton to get a victory. I just think I know it sounds kind of weird too because BC struggled to put the ball in the end zone. They kicked a lot of field goals, not being able to put up a lot of points. I just think they have more firepower than Hamilton, and that'll kind of come into play. I think I expect it to be a close game. Like you mentioned, their offenses are playing. Hamilton's offense has been playing decently well. Tim White and Boliva Mitchell have found that connection. We mentioned Keandre Smith. Canadians kind of been stepping up now as well. What's the um, what's the other receiver's name that Blake meant you
Shamar
mentioned earlier?
Bridges.
Shamar Bridges. So they have a three-headed little kind of tandem there, and then James Butler, who is always motivated to play BC. I know he's most motivated to play Saskatchewan, I believe, who cut him, but I know he's been kind of downplayed it playing BC in the past. Of it's just another game. Whether he wants to tell the media or not, he's motivated as heck to play BC because them trying to moving on from him, if you will. I know he felt a little bit that BC felt like they were okay without me type thing. So he's going to be motivated as heck, and he played very well last year in BC. So if he's able to play, I think that helps Hamilton's case even more. Um, I think BC is going to win a close one, and Hamilton winning wouldn't surprise me as well. Wouldn't shock me either. Especially with how BC's played, keeping teams into the ball game here through the first month of the football season. I wouldn't be shocked, but I got to go with BC, especially against a winless Hamilton Tiger Cats. BC's kind of made it a trend of winning games, late. Hamilton's unfortunately made a trend of losing games late here to start the season. So I think that continues. And
Maybe they'll squib kick it again.
yeah, we'll
To be
see.
fair, I understand I understood the reasoning behind the squib kick. You shouldn't be giving up like a 30-yard return on a squib kick though.
No.
Like it wasn't the squib kick that was the issue because
And
if you squib it and tackle him at like Ottawa's 40 or Ottawa's like 35, like where you should have tackled him instead of your own like 52-yard line, like they don't get into field goal range. They don't have enough time to get into field goal range. Like the squib kick wasn't the issue; it was the inability to tackle that was
to
the
tackle
issue.
him. Yes, man. And they had a chance when he kind of grouped up behind his blockers and then spun out of it. I think they kind of lost track of him, if you will, because he's a smaller returner, which is kind of funny. Plays into
Yeah.
his hand, but get
He's
him
a,
down, man. I couldn't believe it. They score. I'm like, wow, Hamilton's gonna win. They squib kick it, and then he gets it to the 55-yard line. I'm like, you just lost the game after you just won the game, man. Like,
exactly. Like they
what are
gave
we
up like
doing?
they gave up like 250 yards total return between punt and kickoff. Like Deadman had like 160 some yards or 150 some yards total between kickoff and punt return. Tobias Harris had like 90 of it as well. Like, I mean, to be fair, Tobias Harris and Devontae Deadman are two of the best return men in the league. Like Deadman is arguably the best return man in the league. Tobias Harris in his own right is a great return man. So no doubt that they could make teams pay. I mean, I love Deadman. I think as a punt returner, if he were to hit open market, like if he really wanted to chase the money, he could easily be the most paid punt returner in the league because he can work out of the backfield, work as a receiver, work as a return man, and he can flip the field for you. So I mean, I can understand why Hamilton was like, I'm going to squib it to Tobias Harris, not kick it to Devontae Deadman, because the last thing we need is for him to break it for a touchdown. I just don't think they realized that they had to tackle Harris and not just let him run 30 yards. But I got a question for you guys. How do you guys feel about TJ Lee and Keon Hatcher returning to full participation today with BC Lions?
I'll
Yeah,
go. I'll go
sorry,
first,
go
Blake.
ahead,
I think
Paul.
we kind of feel similar of like excitement. I think I'm a little bit more precautious than Blake, though. I'm a little bit like, let's take it easy here, boys. We're 8 months since they tore their Achilles each. They tore it in November, what I believe Blake said, which would be 8 months to now. And we are talking about they came right back into full participants and talking about playing in a few weeks in Calgary, definitely took me back a little bit. And I think I'm kind of putting the brakes on things a little bit. That being said, my opinion does not effing matter. So I know they're gonna continue to go with their timeline. So if they think they're ready versus Calgary, they're gonna go. And that being said, what I told Blake earlier is like, yes, I'm slightly concerned about re-injury slash like stepping back into the same level. I'm also concerned more about like pulling a hammy because you haven't like been in full conditioning or like you haven't been running as well and you're kind of overcompensating for an Achilles, right? Your right side, you see it happen, then you pull a left hammy or something like that, or you pull a left calf or something. So that's where I'm a little bit more concerned. I told Blake I don't need to see them till week 10. Like I said, my opinion doesn't matter, so they're going to continue with their timeline. But I'm excited because I think it'll be fun to see them back in the lineup. But Blake, what are your thoughts? I know you're excited too.
Yeah, no, I was excited, but I was also kind of shocked as even when we had JC Abbott on a couple weeks ago, I believe that was before week 3, maybe week 2, something like that. We asked him about Keon specifically, and he had kind of said that he thought Keon had targeted maybe the touchdown Pacific game, and the rumors he had heard was TJ was more far off than that. So to see that they were full participants in practice today at the beginning of week 5 was absolutely astounding to me. I know that technically, excuse me, they can come back next week, as I believe the CFL states that you can come back in the 6th game without any penalty. But I would definitely be shocked to see them play against Saskatchewan or Calgary for that matter. I think the more realistic date is, I believe the Lions are in Winnipeg at the end of July in week 8. I would
Wow,
think that's, I
and go
think
where
that's,
they that would be crazy.
yeah,
Sorry, Blake. Go where
yeah,
it
no,
happened though. That would be crazy.
yeah, I think that's where they both come back, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do both come back next week.
I would definitely sign up. I would like that. I think it would be probably a little emotional for them to come back to Winnipeg, but I think they could find a way to use that to good energy and hopefully get a win in Winnipeg. But interested to see when they do come back, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm just crossing my fingers, and we'll leave it at that. But that does it for another CFL Quick Picks this week. Shane, thanks for joining us, buddy. Let the people know where they can find your work before we get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, 13th Man Sports as always. You can find me on Twitter at FR_designs_. But yeah, I mean, have articles every week. I got the quick picks coming out. Red Box recap came out. You could check out their last game. I released that the other day. Yeah, so that's about it. And obviously here every Wednesday. Man, I love talking to everyone. You can shoot me a DM on Twitter, shoot me a message on just you know at me about something if you have anything that you want to talk about. Kind of just down to talk football whenever.
Awesome. As always, Shane on a Wednesday night. Shane, we'll talk to you this weekend, and we will see you next Wednesday, my friend.
Yeah,
Thanks,
have a
Shane.
good one, guys. We'll talk next Wednesday.
All right, later, Shane. That concludes our CFL quick picks this week, Blake, and we are coming to the end of another CFF weekly show here on the channel every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock or 6:10 if it's tonight. A little bit running late, Blake and I having to do some stuff. Things happen, folks. Life happens, I guess I should say. But oh darn, I forgot to give Blake or I forgot to give Shane his props. I guess I will have to just do it to you, which I would have loved to give Shane his props as well. But undefeated week, I could see the smile on your face. Undefeated week for
Second time in
yourself.
3 weeks.
Yes, undefeated week for yourself and Shane. Me not too shabby, 3-1. I picked those darn Winnipeg Blue Bombers to win, and they got me in the back. And Calgary ended up getting you guys the fourth and final victory. That was the deciding factor who was going to go undefeated. And Calgary, and thanks to Calgary and Renee Paredes, you guys are 4-0, and I am 3-1. That brings our season totals to Blake gets the first place lead as of now. Blake Milton at 11-5 on the season.
Pretty
Cole
good
at
considering I started week 1 0-4.
Yes, it is. I agree. Cole at 10-6 and Shane at 8-4 because Shane has missed 1 week here with us. So Shane, I wasn't sure if I was gonna get like what we're gonna do. We're just gonna dock him all 4 games. He is gonna finish with 4 less games, and then maybe we'll think of a penalty if it comes close. Shane's not getting away with this of missing a week or two. He's not getting the crown over one of us. He has to outright beat us with more victories with having missed a week, which will be kind of hard to catch up now. What is he? Well, actually, I guess he's only a few games back. One good week. It is hard with only 4 games to pick. A lot of the time, 2 out of the 4 games you're picking the same. It's hard to gain some traction. Now, that being said, Shane can do so. Only down, 2 wins to me, 3 wins to you. He's the little engine that could the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that are trying to track down the BC Lions, the Calgary Stampeders, the Saskatchewan or Rough Riders. Can Shane do it? Can the Winnipeg Blue Bombers do it? I don't know, and I hope they do not. So, Blake, I don't know about anything much more other than my little rant here that we're going to finish the show with. But anything else other than that comes to mind before we close things out for another show?
No, I'll just give the floor to you. I'm really excited to hear this. So
Well, it's not too much of a rant now that I'm calmed down and I am kind of hungry. I was pretty upset earlier. So before I guess I get going here, folks, and before we end the show, 81 tuning in here tonight. As always, Blake and I appreciate every single one of you guys tuning in. It makes the show fun for us. So please keep doing so. Please keep interacting with us in the chat if you're able to. And if you're tuning in on Twitter or X, whatever the kids are calling it these days, please head over to YouTube and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. I know me and Blake like to say, smash the subscribe button. When you guys do, hit the little notification bell. You guys will get notified every time Blake and I go live or post some content here on the channel. So, Blake, let's get into it. We had some news today, folks. Obviously, yesterday, for all of us good Canadian football fanatics, we are obviously loyal, most of us, I want to say, loyal hockey fans, the good Canadians that we are. I believe the home openers, each NHL's team home openers got released. I believe it was yesterday. They teased that the next day, today, would be I believe, the rest of the release of the schedule. And I don't know who first broke it. I believe maybe it's Farhan Lalji that broke it. The Vancouver Canucks are scheduled to play on November 16th and 17th. The most meaningful date would be the November 17th date versus the Nashville Predators in a rematch of the Western Conference first round playoff series that they just had this past spring. So big time game, a cool game for Vancouver fans to see, to want to take in. The only thing that irks me is a game on that day, as well as a 5 o'clock start when the Grey Cup is at 3 o'clock. So now my frustration, Blake, is hard
3:30.
to aim at specific people because I want to be angry with the Grey Cup of not making the CFL for not making a bigger issue out of this, for not kind of ruffling more feathers. Now, that being said, I feel like this is probably out of their control, and I think my anger should be mostly at the NHL/Vancouver Canucks, and that's where I'll direct it at, I guess, at this time. The Grey Cup was well announced far beyond the announcement of the NHL season. I would be I would guess it was well announced before they even started planning their schedule, the 24-25 NHL schedule. Um, and that being said, they look into things like, concert dates, stuff like that, building availabilities. You know, the Grey Cup is a Canada-wide event. I would say I don't know if I want to say it's a North American-wide event, but half of the players that are playing in the CFL are American. So the two teams that are represented in the Grey Cup, half of the families are watching throughout the United States and stuff like that. So maybe not a North America wide event, but at least a national wide event where a lot of eyes should be on the event. A lot of eyes should be consuming the game, the event. And I question now whether or not that is going to happen due to this fact. Um, like I mentioned on Twitter, Blake, for anyone that wants to go see kind of a little bit of my thoughts earlier, I tweeted about it, you responded, and then I kind of made a few tweets responding back, just kind of letting my feelings be known, not at you, but just kind of just talking about it more so than anything. And the Canucks in the past, under Brian Burke's management, Farhan Lalji reported that on Donnie and Dolly today that in past Brian Burke would request to not have games on the Subway Bowl, the day of the Subway Bowl, which for those that don't know that are tuning in outside of the BC area is the BC High School Championship day, which the JVs, both AA, AAA, and then senior and grade 8 provincial championship games are played that day. Now that's a high school football event that is Brian Burke made it his priority to say, don't schedule the Vancouver Canucks on this day. We do not want to play on this day. Make it a known thing to let's help out. Let's kind of be a big brother to the other organizations, the other entertainers. I know it's high school football, so it's a little bit different, but the other in this case, the other pro sports teams in our area, in our community, we should want to embrace that. We should want to have a Vancouver Canucks post of JT Miller and Thatcher Demko are going to the game. Do you got your Grey Cup tickets? Are you guys going to the game? Instead, you guys are playing a hockey game at 5 o'clock, 2 hours after kickoff, in probably I would say a top 3 hockey market in the NHL. I would probably go maybe a little realistically is like top 5. Toronto, Edmonton as of right now are probably up there, right? But Montreal's in there as well. Boston, some of these hockey markets. Vancouver is just as big and just as diehard as those hockey markets. And as much as I don't want to say it, Blake, because I don't condone it, I don't agree with it. Obviously, I'm a big Canucks fan, just like any other people in BC. Right, I love going to games when I can. I love being able to watch the Canucks whenever I'm able to. Whether we want to admit it or not, that game is going to be sold out. That there will be 30,000 people in Rogers Arena, and that will 100% take away from people that want to go attend the Grey Cup. As much as I don't want to admit it, and I don't want to give credit to the CFL attendance Twitter pages and stuff like that, we saw, unfortunately, some of the maybe fair weathered fans or casual consumers of the CFL, where they came for more entertainment than to watch a football game, right? Where I don't have to speak to you and I, right? You and I are there to watch a football game. Entertainment is kind of secondary, right? So it's a little bit different. And I know there's people out there that are like us, but if you see and Thursday's a bad example where the attendance, I don't even believe was announced inside the stadium because they obviously they knew, obviously, because it looks bad. You announce it. It was a lesser number by quite a substantial amount, I would guess. A lot of those people, like I said, and like I agree with, the people that did buy tickets, they bought hats, they bought shirts, right? So it's good for the BC Lions still. So I'm not trying to be negative here, but a lot of those people did leave, right? And I think that will come into play when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks are playing tonight. A lot of these people that will maybe be sports fans that are going to be going to the Grey Cup are season ticket holders of the Vancouver Canucks, will want to maybe go to a Canucks game rather than a Grey Cup game. Now, I know that does sound shitty. That sounds negative, especially, folks. I'm not saying, I think this is going to be a little bit different. I think that if the BC Lions are in the game, that could be a little bit different. I think the impact will be much greater if the Lions are in the game, where a lot of those casual fans will say, you know what, I can miss a Vancouver Canucks game on a Sunday night versus Nashville because you know what, maybe they're coming back in March or something like that, or maybe you know what, you just went to the game last night versus Chicago, something like that. It's where if BC for whatever reason isn't in the game. Now, obviously, you see behind me, you see Blake and I. I hope, just like anybody else, that the BC Lions are in that game playing for the Grey Cup. That being said, it is not a guarantee and is going to be extremely hard to do. So if you have to be prepared for the scenario that that does not happen.
Yep.
It could very well happen. And if that doesn't happen, or if that doesn't happen, we've heard it before in the past. 2014 was a very big struggle to sell out that game. JC Abbott, I believe, came on the program. I don't know if he came on the program, if I heard it on Three Down Nation. My head's kind of rambling all different JC Abbott thoughts right now, but he mentioned of, going to that game in 2014. He was still in high school. His high school was given tickets. Yes, given tickets, not bought tickets. They were given tickets to that game to go to basically make it look like it was a lot fuller than it was. Now, obviously, that being said, that's pretty smart on the CFL's part. They should probably do that. Maybe it's not every high school program that they go to, but maybe it's they enter a giveaway for 5 lucky high school programs at every in every province that the Grey Cup's hosted at, that they can be given a certain amount of ticket package, right? Them giving them to multiple schools is probably an issue because then you're obviously desperate. I think setting up a giveaway where you're able to and entice some of these schools where you could win free tickets to the Grey Cup. That's a better way to do it. When you're desperate, I think that's maybe a little bit more concerning. And that was the last time the Grey Cup was held in Vancouver. Obviously, that was 10 years ago. Things have changed. A lot more success has come in BC, but I think the ultimate factor is if BC is not playing in that game, there's a lot more casual CFL and BC Lions fans than we would like to admit, and they would 100% go, whether people won't admit, they would go to a Canucks game rather than the Grey Cup because the Lions aren't playing into it. The Lions aren't playing into it. Like, and I know that's really weird to think about, but people will think about it that way and will go to Canucks games, especially because I've already bought the tickets, right? Some of those season ticket holders. Now, where I hope things maybe have the thing that maybe could be a game changer, and I'm crossing my fingers. My girlfriend's going to be one of them. The significant others slash women from the age of 20 to 35 need to keep those boyfriends, those other people that want to go to Canucks games. They cannot miss the Jonas Brothers, which should, I would think, interfere with the start of that hockey game. I would think Grey Cup's going to kick off by all the time, the festivities, the anthem. I would think 3:30 is more likely a kickoff than 3
Yeah.
o'clock. I don't know. You know more so than me, but all the anthems, the teams kind of coming onto the field, the acknowledgments, the videos, all that sort of stuff that comes with a Grey Cup usually pushes kickoff back a little bit. So I would think it's going to be closer to 3:30 more than 3. Halftime probably comes around 5. The performance probably ends around 5:30. I don't know. You probably, like I mentioned, better than me, being the Grey Cup veteran. But half an hour, 40 minutes with getting the equipment off the field, anywhere in between that. So we need all those people to just keep and encourage all their friends or significant others that they're going to the game with, that they have to go to this football game tonight because the Jonas Brothers are going to be there playing. So that's my only hope, that if the Lions aren't playing in the game, possibly we could see, some people stay because the Jonas Brothers. Now, that being said, that kind of ends my rant. Not too much hostility, Blake. I don't think I had too much hostility anyways. I've definitely cooled down. I was definitely I was walking home from work. I see this tweet and then I reply to it, and I'm like steaming the whole time. Like, I'm like, man, I don't even know what to say right now. Okay, and that's why I was kind of glad that you tweeted or responded, because I was about to tweet to the other person that responded, and kind of, he probably would have been like, man, this guy's a jerk. Um, but like, I was more so just kind of wanting to. That was what I wanted to tweet, and because you can only tweet so much, I couldn't tweet all of what I wanted to tweet in one tweet, and I hate adding a tweet. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna tweet this. Hopefully, someone comments, and I can add just a whole thing that they can follow for my thoughts. You perfectly did that, and I was definitely, like I mentioned, heated on the walk home. I was like, man, this is so fucking dumb. And like Farhan Lalji said on Donnie and Dolly, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. This is just a big time at the BC Lions from the Vancouver Canucks right now. And I don't know why you wouldn't want to kind of piggyback off one another. Amar Doman's done such a great job of doing so when it comes to when the Canucks have their home opener, that sort of stuff. you'd think that, Big Brother Canucks maybe are looking out for the little brother BC Lions, and they are not doing so when it comes to that. So I will end my rant there, Blake. Is there anything that comes to mind for you, buddy, when it comes to that?
Yeah, the only thoughts that I would have is that, as you mentioned, and someone commented, I believe the name was Jamie Pitt Blow, I believe, something like that.
Yeah.
That used to be an employee, I assume, used to be an employee of the BC Lions, and he said that in both 2011, when the Lions were in the game and did win the Grey Cup, and in 2014, the last time we hosted, that the Lions worked together with the Canucks to make sure that this didn't happen, and that uh, lost my train of thought here.
All good.
Uh,
That you
no, that sorry, that maybe that didn't happen this year, where the Canucks management and the Lions management. I know the Grey Cup as well is also a CFL run thing. So while the certain team, Hamilton, Ottawa, whoever is hosting that particular year, they're technically the host. They don't really run Grey Cup stuff. So I think that maybe falls more on CFL headquarters to kind of give the Canucks the heads up. Hey, like this is the date of the Grey Cup. Don't schedule a game on this date. I know someone had also commented, why didn't they just have this game on Saturday night? And you kind of commented it as well. The Canucks actually do have a game on that Saturday night. It's the Connor Bedard, what should now be his homecoming, as of course he didn't play last year when Chicago was in town. So the only thing that I might think is that the Canucks would possibly try and request that this game would either be
7
moved
o'clock.
up to a noon puck drop or something like that, where it's a noon puck drop, game ends by 2:30. The two stadiums are literally right next to each other. Joe Blow can walk from Rogers Arena to BC Place, or as you said, they get it pushed back to a 7 o'clock start, where by then the Grey Cup is pretty much over. And again, Joe Blow that was at the Grey Cup, and if by chance the Lions aren't in the game, he can leave. He can go to Rogers Arena. He can still enjoy that Canucks game.
Man, there is going to be a lot of intoxicated people downtown Vancouver that night. It is going to be Grey Cup's going to already be a scene, a Vancouver Canucks game as well. And if that's the first time they see Nashville, which is probably more
Most likely, yeah.
most likely, should be a good time because obviously the Steven Stamkos edition,
Right?
a few editions, right, and then obviously the playoff history this past year and in 2011 as well. So should be a good game and will be quite the day in Vancouver. Excited to say that I have my tickets and will be there. Don't have to worry about me going to a Canucks game. I'll be in my seat, sitting my butt, watching some football game that day. Unless maybe it's a 7 o'clock puck drop, and actually no, I'm celebrating afterwards. I'm not even going to the Canucks game. It's all football that day, all the time. So, Blake, before we get out of it, gonna talk a little bit about some news slash update the people, and also live talk out the post game show, which is the news. So, as I mentioned last week, folks, I got my official media press pass right there. You can see it right there. So I will hopefully be trying to cover all BC Lions home games from now on from BC Place. That being said, we'll make it a little bit challenging to do post-game shows with Blake right away or anytime afterwards, because usually I'm kind of in a rush to the ferry. That being said, this time will work out pretty nicely in terms of not having to rush to the ferry. It's being a 4 o'clock kickoff for Saskatchewan. Game should end around 7. We'll have plenty of time to catch the last ferry home at 11. Now that being said, with the access I get, I'm able to have an opportunity to sit in on the media availability, hopefully ask a question or two, which I'm going to take advantage of from now on when I'm able to. So from now on, what we're going to do for home games, post games, is Blake will be giving you guys a little, maybe a what can we call it? We'll come up with some sort of name, but maybe a walk to the car, walk to the SkyTrain, thoughts from the car type thing.
Yeah.
where Blake will give you guys a similar video to what you guys saw on Thursday, I believe, where Blake just kind of give you quickly his initial thoughts on the game for about 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll upload that on the YouTube, on Twitter, where you can find it on social media and YouTube. And then afterwards, these are for the home games only, folks. If I'm able, or if we're able to, if Blake's still around by the time I'm finished up asking the questions and stuff like that, because I don't want to hold him up too long. I know he'll be a good guy and wait around for a little bit, but I don't want to hold him up if it's going to be overly too long. Where I will just say, it's all good, buddy. I will catch you some other time. Let's get your thoughts out there right away initially, to the people, and then we can either record our recap together that night at some point, or maybe I will do a solo episode the other day. We'll kind of talk through that. So expect for home games to not really have too much of a concrete time for a post game show. Expect to have Blake's kind of initial thoughts, even maybe get Blake's initial thoughts inside the stadium. You could even do that instead. That'll be the routine for home games. For away games, Blake and I obviously, except, or I guess, excuse me, Blake will be traveling to a few away games. So depending on
Yeah.
how his schedule works for those, we'll be able to do post game shows pretty much right away afterwards, unless Blake's working or something like that. Away game, post game shows, you will have more of an idea what the time will be for that kind of starting, and have more of an idea of when Blake and I will be going live following the game. Usually you can expect us to go live, anywhere from 15 to 30-ish minutes after the game. So for away games this Sunday, I believe it's a 4 o'clock kick. Is it a 4 o'clock
Yeah.
kick? Game will probably end at about 7. I don't think Blake has any plans. Haven't talked to him. Sunday, do you have plans?
I was just looking at my schedule. I've reffing, but I think I have about like an hour between 7 and 8. So
Okay, so perfectly. We'll probably more immediately go post game show. And even if Blake has to be interrupted and kind of leave to go ref, maybe he stays for game balls, just likes that sort of stuff, and I can do the game recap by myself. So, like I mentioned, post games on the road, you can expect to see Blake and I more consistently. And then when it comes to home games, you can expect to see Blake's beautiful face for a quick 4 or 5 minutes. Anything, honestly, anything under 10 minutes is, I feel like, a good amount of video where you can kind of get your thoughts
yeah.
out, Blake, talk about the offense, talk about the defense. And if you're not able to, because I know you're sometimes able to, or you're sometimes having to, get the family to, back home and stuff like that, so you're having to drive and stuff like that. So sometimes in that scenario, I know you're probably not able to do that, and we'll have to, just work on the fly, as we always do when that happens. But just wanted to update the folks, because I know we try to update people on social media. Blake and I, being busy folks, having to work, this unfortunately is not our full-time job yet. It's hard to tell my boss, hey, I'm going to take 15 minutes out of my day to tweet something for my YouTube channel, instead of work. And I don't think, I just know the reaction I'm going to get. So hard to kind of stay on my phone throughout the day at work. We try our best to keep you guys updated when we can, but I think this is probably the best way how and why I say, folks, 87 people, smash the like button. When you guys do, hit the little notification bell, and you guys will get notified every time Blake and I go live. Won't have to, follow us. Won't have to, look out for a tweet or anything like that. You guys will get a little notification in your phone. For those that have, phones, I know there's some people that consume us. I think, like, Jay on maybe or no, I guess Jay would be an iPhone probably, or something like that. But some people that consume us on laptop or something like that, or and maybe they throw us on the phone, or on the TV, excuse me, on the what's the I want to say AirPlay,
Yeah, no, that's a screenplay or
what's
whatever.
yeah, where some people do that. I know that. So please, folks, subscribe, press the notification bell. You guys will get notified every single time Blake and I go live. Blake, I think I had it good for 1 week. We got it under 90 minutes, and we're back to 2 damn hours again. I'm freaking starved, my friend. I think that's going to do it. But is there any final thoughts before we close out the show this week?
No, I'm pretty hungry myself, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this was a a nice distraction from the unfortunate news that I had today. So it was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope we can provide something similar to you guys as well. Don't want to use the word distraction like I used earlier. I think that's a little bit of a negative, but just a outlet for you guys. So, you don't have to participate in the chat, but come chat with us. How's your guys' day? You and Blake, you guys can ask that. We'll ask you get back, kind of thing, right? Just use us for an outlet, and then obviously as well a distraction in more of a positive term where let's just talk some football. Let's forget about some of our problems, some of our situations that's going on, and kind of let go and enjoy ourselves for 90 minutes or an hour and 20 in case of today, or more often than not here on the Canadian Football Fanatics Weekly Show. I think, Blake, that'll do us for another week. We hope you guys enjoy CFL Week 5 already, folks. Already into month 2 and July of the CFL season. I can't believe how fast things are flying. But as always, we will see you guys next Wednesday. Enjoy the week of CFL football.